The food check is coming on.
Is the wind just kicking everybody today?
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Carly, did you bring it to me?
Here he is.
Hello again.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, Mayor.
Thunder, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nice to be reunited.
Are you in South Bend?
I am right at home.
I don't want you to spill all over the bed.
Crazy, isn't it?
I have to go downstairs and get it.
It's amazing how much you can wind up doing without leaving the house. So I guess I'm glad of that. But I won't be sorry when we get a little more freedom of maneuver around here.
How are the numbers in Indiana?
You know, in our area, it's pretty good, except for a couple of counties where I think because they have these agricultural processing facilities, the per capita numbers are pretty scary. But for the most part, I'm looking out my window at one of the two major hospitals here. They've not had any trouble keeping up yet. So we'll just see. I mean, as of now, the governor's plan would have the Brickyard 400 take place on July 4th. That's about 100,000 people in one place. And I wonder if we're not playing with fire there, but we will continue to see. How's it where you are?
You know, actually, Cass County is experiencing, rising numbers, but we're also testing at higher rates.
Good.
So that's the interesting kind of story about North Dakota. People are they're challenged with social distancing, but I mean, I think maybe Larry or Phil might have a different perspective, but you go to the grocery store and about 30% of people are wearing masks. But if you go to places where, like go to Lowe's in the morning when most of the people are over 60, almost everybody has a mask. And so it's interesting to see the age disparity in the number of people wearing masks. So, whether that becomes our governor, as you may have seen, over the weekend, pleaded with people not to let the mask be a political statement. So that was.
I saw that. Yeah, what a rare thing to see. So I was encouraged by that.
It's not like he isn't incredibly pro-Trump, and so it was. I think all these people who are getting daily public health briefings understand the significance of airborne, stopping the transmission in confined buildings. So if they want to win this fight, they should be doing exactly what our governor did, which is to encourage people to wear masks.
That's good to hear. I mean, it felt like in the first few days there was a nice kind of bipartisan moment where the fair number of governors from both parties were stepping up and doing the right thing. But I was talking to one governor who said that the moment the president started talking about liberate this, about 3 weeks in, it turned it into such a political thing in so many places that's really hampered the effort.
Even Mitch McConnell, I don't know if you saw him yesterday or it might have been the day before, basically saying, wear your mask. I wear mine.
Good.
So, if you're them and you want this pandemic to be on the waning side in the end,
that's right,
then you should be encouraging all manners of
that's right,
public health implementation. It's just kind of interesting because the president's such a day trader. He can't be on 20.
Hot and cold. Yeah,
it's
true.
Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to chat.
It's all good. We are going to go ahead and get started. I am very excited to welcome all of you to our 2020 virtual governor's dinner. It would be so nice to be with all of you in person, but this is the next best thing. And in a week that has been very, very difficult, a week that has brought up a lot of hurt and a lot of anger in our communities, especially here in the Midwest. This gathering means something new and different for us. And so I'm hopeful that tonight will share as a reminder that we can come together and do good things and that we can bring hope and justice and good policy back to our communities. And the people that are a part of this call tonight and a part of this event have all done that and will continue to do that. So I'm hopeful that we can share that with our crew tonight. The governor's dinner, of course, honors the legacy of Governors Sinner, Guy, and Link here in North Dakota, our Dem NPL governors who served the state with integrity and compassion for the residents here. We are proud to honor that legacy with what we call the Legacy of Leadership Award. And tonight we are very excited to honor one of our own with that award. And I would like to first introduce our friend Phil Mueller, who served in the North Dakota legislature, I believe, from 1999 until 2011. And he is going to introduce our award winner tonight. So I will pass it over to you, Phil. Thanks for
Mary,
joining
want to listen to this?
Thank you very much, Kylie. And it's great to be with you all. It's very nice to visit with Mayor Pete, who I saw a lot on TV, but this is a little different scenario, I guess. But welcome to our festivities for the evening, Mayor Pete. Well, I'm Phil Mueller, as Kylie said. I'm from Valley City, and I'm extremely pleased to be part of this evening's activities. I've not attended a virtual dinner before, but as best I can tell, it might be good for my my weight program that I'm on. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce this year's Governor's Legacy of Leadership Award. He's a colleague, a mentor, and mostly just a dear, dear friend. We served together in Bismarck for 14 years. He got me started in the business. We spent a lot of windshield time together, going from little town to little town and visiting with people, and the parade sort of never ending. They may end up this summer. But he continues to be an inspiration to me and to many others in our community and in our state. And 32 years in Bismarck and going for 36, all while serving at Valley City State University in an all-consuming job as director of the VCSU Foundation. He additionally has been in most of the community and service organizations that our fair city has to offer. He is a statesman in every sense, who has done so much for our community, for District 24, and for North Dakota. His accomplishments are way too numerous for this short introduction, but trust me when I say they are many. He's had every reason to not run again. Mary Lee, his wife, who I see wandering around in the background there a bit, his wife of 48 years and his #1 supporter would like to have him stay home. And I fully get that. Valley City State University job of raising money gets tougher and tougher every year. I serve on the foundation board with Larry, and I understand that full well. This one's certainly going to be no exception in terms of being a tough year. He has three rather handsome grandsons who he very much adores, and I'm sure they would like to have Grandpa spend a bit more time with them. Well, and let's face it, Senator, you're not a spring chicken anymore, unfortunately. Most of us aren't. But he's going to make the sacrifice one more time. In District 24, we couldn't be happier, we couldn't be prouder. Congratulations to my true and good friend, Senator Larry Robinson. No one deserves this award any more than you do. Thank you.
Yay. Thanks, Phil. And Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you. I wanted to add as well, when we were talking about who we should give this award to this year, the Governor's Legacy of Leadership Award, you were one of the very first people that our staff mentioned, and that, you know, we thought about, like Phil said, all of the reasons that you probably had not to step up again and run and to enjoy retirement. And you've faced adversity like some of us will never know in the past few years, and we've walked alongside you with that. But your commitment to service and to your community has shown through as you've continued to face that and continue to step up to serve and lead. And so we're grateful for all that you do. We're grateful that you are a part of the DEM NPL family, and we're very honored to give you this award tonight. Even though I can't physically hand you a plaque, I will hand the microphone over to you.
Well, thank you, Kylie, and thank you, Phil. This is an honor. It's more than an honor. I'm really in awe when Kylie called and shared with me this news. In my opinion, there's a long list of folks in our party that are far more qualified, that have done far more than I have and ever will. And that's one of the reasons it's such an honor to be part of the Democratic NPL here in North Dakota. So again, I thank all of you. I'm humbled. I owe a big thank you, as you mentioned, to my wife, who has been I'm sorry. She's been there all along. And I was so fortunate to serve over the years with just stellar folks. You know, I remember Art Goff and boy, the 14 years serving with Phil Mueller and Ralph Metcalf. We had a team North Dakota. This was Team District 24. And that was a run that was second to none. And some of the best years of our lives, just serving with two outstanding individuals. And Phil, thank you again for your words. Ralph would have been with us tonight. Ralph is in the North Dakota Veterans Home, and Mrs. Valley City, Mrs. Politics, and we heard today that they have their first COVID case in the Veterans Home, which is not good news. But I want to thank everyone. Pete, it's good to see you. Heidi, it's always good to see you. Kylie, you and your staff and everyone in the Democratic NPL. I am truly honored. I don't feel deserving of this award. Again, there's so many folks out there that have done so much. And the three governors that we've named this award after, talk about performers, talk about class acts. Every one of them, all three of them, just unbelievable people, and their legacy will live on forever. We've been served so well by those three, and we miss them dearly. So thank you very much. Thank you for this event. Thank you for the award. I'm deeply honored.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you for saying yes to accepting the award and for being with us to do so. I think your humility and your compassion shows very clearly in your words and in your service. So thank you. And thanks to Mary Lee. I'm sure she's still in the background there somewhere. We know that it takes two sometimes to do this work, and she always shows up. And so we appreciate her just as much as we appreciate you. With that, I am very excited to introduce my friend Kyle Thorson, who is a dear friend from many years back and who is the next state senator from District 18 in Grand Forks. I will pass it over to Kyle.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kylie. I appreciate it. I'm Kyle Thorson, and I'm running for the North Dakota State Senate here in Grand Forks. And I have the immense privilege tonight to introduce Pete Buttigieg to you as this evening's speaker. Pete served as a two-term mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and was a Democratic candidate for President of the United States in 2020. He is a graduate of Harvard University and an Oxford Rhodes Scholar, and also served as an intelligence officer in the Naval Reserve, where he attained the rank of lieutenant, spent 7 months deployed to Afghanistan, and was awarded the Joint Service Commendation Medal. In April 2019, he announced his candidacy for president, and in February 2020 won the Iowa state caucuses, becoming the first openly gay person to ever win a presidential primary or caucus. One of the inspiring moments of Pete's campaign for me was his desire to bring about a new kind of politics and return us to the time when respect, belonging, honesty, teamwork, responsibility, and joy were the norm in politics. To a time when politicians instilled faith in our American institutions and when we could disagree with one another but still be friends at the end of the day. I believe in these values, and I know that they are shared among us right here in North Dakota. In fact, I remember my parents always saying when I grew up that they vote for the person and not the party. We'd listen to each other in reasonable discussions, use facts and knowledge to make decisions based on what was in front of us and not what was told on social media. And that's the future of the United States that I want to see again. One where we can work together as friends and neighbors to bring about change. And one of the aspects of Mayor Pete's campaign that truly resonated with me. Secondly, as a gay man running for office, I would be remiss if I didn't say that Mayor Pete lived out this message of honesty by running for the highest office in the land as an openly gay man. And that is so incredibly powerful because it shows others that the world is changing and making room at the table for more marginalized people in a lot of ways. And Mayor Pete affirmed for me how important it is that we as a party continue that message of inclusion and to fight for a more diverse set of candidates running for office. And I promise you that even here, and especially here in North Dakota, we could use a little bit more diversity in our legislature. Mayor Pete also reminded me that it doesn't always take a win to make progress, and that simply by standing up and speaking our truth, that we can create hope and lead others to a better world. So Mayor Pete, thank you so much for inspiring us and joining us here this evening. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Kyle. What a wonderful introduction. And thank you for stepping up. You in turn will never know who you can be an example to even before the first ballot is cast. And so I want to recognize that, as well as let you know that we're all looking forward to toasting your victory in arriving in the state Senate and making history there. And thank you in particular for, say again?
I said, that's great. I'll see you in November then.
Sounds good. We're going to have a lot to celebrate if we get this right. And I have a lot of hope for that. I've often said on the campaign that running for office is an act of hope. And I see that in you. And thanks also for citing the values like belonging and respect and joy that we like to call our rules of the road on our campaign that really guided what we do. You know what? When you run for president, you experience the entire country all at once, which is a pretty disorienting thing sometimes. And of course, I was running to be president of the entire country. But I will say, I think my Midwestern roots and values that I think we share and are very much in touch with in places like Indiana and places like North Dakota certainly informed the values of the campaign. I want to thank and recognize your Democratic NPL chair, Kylie, and thank you for your wonderful work. I remember you were kind enough to take my call when I was a pretty obscure fellow, calling to gauge your views on what we needed for the next DNC chair when I was running, and I was really struck by the level of commitment that it takes. You know, some of the party chairs I was talking to had legions of staff and millions of dollars and a pretty clear set of resources to work with. Others had to really be creative with resources and support and build things out in a way that I continue to be so impressed with, and it's one of the reasons I'm glad to be here. I'm thrilled to be reunited virtually with Senator Heitkamp, somebody I have so much respect for, and someone who went out on a limb again with a kind word for me when I was an obscure person trying to make a statement about what the future of the DNC could look like, and someone who teamed up with my own home state senator Joe Donnelly in so many ways and continues to do great work to make sure that maybe often more conservative rural areas are hearing a message that is as impactful in the lives of one part of the country as in another. And congratulations, Senator Robinson, on your recognition and on all of your contributions, and thanks for your moving remarks. Thank you. So pleased to see you recognized, and so pleased to see the way people in this community of supporters and Democrats are looking after each other and supporting each other, even while we're in this this exile from the thing that we who are involved in politics are most accustomed to, which is being together in person. And that's one of the things I miss most about the trail. I know there are folks here who are part of our effort. In particular, I know one of the style of events I most wish I could have gotten to more were the Chefs Repeat events. And I know there was a very successful one in Fargo that many people on this call were part of. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm thrilled that no matter what team any of us was on when it came to the competition for the nomination, we're all pulling in the same direction now. It's odd to figure out how to give a speech in this context. I've done my share of state Democratic Party dinners, and I'm used to the format. I'm used to the gathering. I'm used to the chicken, and I'm used to seeing faces rising and falling and having that interaction. And of course, this isn't a speech in that sense. Maybe it's more like a visit, because we're all or most of us at home right now. But I think also a really important moment for us to find and craft new ways, as we're doing right now, to lift each other up and to build each other up in the important work that's going on. And I think that's especially important in the so-called red states. Needless to say, Indiana is about as conservative as it gets. And yet I've seen Indiana vote. I was here in 2008 when our state voted for President Obama, first time we've gone blue since LBJ. I've seen what's possible in cities and counties and districts and states that were written off. And one of the things that was most gratifying to me as a presidential candidate was being in a lot of the counties that had famously swung from supporting President Obama to voting for President Trump, and seeing how many people there, so long as we approached them and addressed them in a way that invited them to be part of something with us, we're ready to take that leap and make that change and vote for different and better leadership. I saw the power of party building. And again, I'm preaching to the choir here. I just want to encourage you in your efforts, especially in those areas where, I know there are some counties here in Indiana where a lot of folks might have thought they were the only Democrat in town until an organizer or a party function let them know that there are actually a couple others. And then you find a little more courage to speak up at coffee after church or wherever you're gathered with friends and watch a community grow. And I know I'm also joining you on a painful day in our country. Just the news of the day, the anguish that is happening in response to the injustice that we're dealing with as a country, the pain that is being expressed in Minnesota. That news of the day, sitting amid news of the week and news of the year that's so painful and upsetting and challenging. I think in many ways it tests our faith in the future of the American project. That America is being put to challenges that we haven't seen in living memory. And that's exactly why it's so important that we gather together and work together to make sure that we bring about better leadership and better results. I've been imagining the look that would come over my face if you were to travel back in time and go to, I don't know, New Year's Day this year and tell me that the stakes of the presidential election were about to go way up. I would have looked at you funny. How could that possibly be a reality when the stakes already seemed so high, when we were already at a fork in the road when it came to the trajectory of the country? And yet here we are, now knowing that the process of how we as a country climb out of the hole that this pandemic has put us in is nothing short of the question of how our political and economic and social arrangements are going to work, I believe, for the rest of my lifetime. We're making decisions at that level, or we're about to be, in a way that I don't think has happened since FDR was confronted with the circumstances that led to the New Deal. That's frightening, but it's also exciting in a way. It reminds us how much is on the line. It reminds us what's at stake. And it reminds us of the power of organizing around our values and linking our values through our campaigns to policies and outcomes that are going to make people's lives better off. And I know the issues that the Democratic NPL in North Dakota have focused on are very much about that politics of the personal. I think whatever political issue we're talking about, from jobs and the economy to creating educational opportunity to racial and economic justice, to LGBTQ equality, to women's rights, to some of the most abstruse issues of international relations and foreign affairs. I believe they matter because they find their way into our everyday lives. The decisions that they make in those big white buildings in Washington and all of the halls of power, all the way through to a county office somewhere in this country, matter because they find their way into our paychecks and into our marriages and into our homes and our neighborhoods. That's why we're in this. And that's why so much depends on getting this right. Whether we're talking about education and properly investing in public education so that a future generation can succeed. Whether we're talking about wages and empowering workers at a time when work has not been rewarded the way it used to be. And that was before we were faced with this additional calamity of how to get everybody back to work. And I think the response to that calamity is not just a question of getting back to the status quo as we knew it before, but how to make sure it's better so that we're not as vulnerable to harm and to danger and to exclusion and inequality as this virus has revealed us to be. And we got to make sure that the values that we believe in are spoken of in a way that doesn't allow anybody to get away with treating them as values that belong to one side of the aisle. Certainly when I think about a value like faith, I think about the commandments that we look after the least among us, and that we will be judged based on how we look after those who are oppressed and marginalized. I'm not out to impose my interpretation of my faith on anybody, but I do believe it's a good time to remember that God does not belong to a political party. I think now is an opportunity to talk about values like freedom and the need to recognize that there's more to freedom than just freedom from some regulation or expectation. Right now we're seeing that as the opportunity to have freedom from a terrible disease is pitted against folks' temptation to have the freedom to engage in things as though we didn't have a problem in our hands. I think about our democracy that's at stake and the choices that are about to be made and the need for a more representative republic, the need for us to have elections that are available for everybody to vote, whether it's safe in-person voting, as I believe we need to protect, or safe by mail voting, as I believe we need to make sure is available to every single eligible voter. And security. Another one of those issues that's been talked about like it belonged to the right, like it belonged on one side of the aisle. And actually, now more than ever, we're being reminded of the implications of negligence on issues from global health security to election security to cyber security. And I would add climate security to that category too. Just as with what's going on with the pandemic, when it comes to climate, we're being served up a false choice. It tells us we've got to either choose between doing the right thing for the long run or the economic imperatives of the moment, when really getting it right economically means ensuring that we have a responsible path forward, one that's going to create more opportunity than there was before. We are the only ones looking to the long term in this way. And it's one of the reasons why I think we have a historic opportunity to build bridges, to create the kinds of connections if we approach people with respect and call them to a sense of belonging, not by trying to trick them and pretend that our values are any different than they are, not by giving an inch on what we believe in, but by calling more people to our side. I couldn't believe how many of what I like to call future former Republicans we saw on the campaign trail this year, and we welcomed them with open arms. I think now we've got not just an opportunity, but an obligation to make sure that we're supporting our candidates up and down the ballot, as the people on this call have generously done by supporting the party in North Dakota. I want to share very briefly why I thought it was so important the moment I realized that the math wasn't there for me to attain the nomination, to stand behind Joe Biden and support his campaign. This wasn't just an awareness of what we're up against. Lord knows that the challenges and the problems and the cruelty and the division that this president has created ought to be motivation enough. This is also about what we're for. And one of the things I see in the vice president, even though it's expressed in a different way and by a different messenger than I represent, is that same commitment to those values that we talked about at the beginning. He started his campaign on day one by talking about the soul of the nation. And I think it's a good reminder as every mayor knows, that the job of executive leadership is about a lot more than policy. Policy matters. We got to have good policy, and we're seeing now what happens when we don't. So does administration, executive leadership, getting things done, competence. But there's something that sits, I think, on top of that too, that matters so much. And it's an intangible quality that isn't anywhere in the written job description of the presidency, but probably is the most important part of all. And it's that sense of calling us to our higher values, of drawing out of us flawed human beings something that would be better than if we had leaders who were calling out to what is worst in us. That's what I think is at stake morally, in addition to the things that are at stake for our security, things that are at stake for our economy, the things that are at stake for our democracy in the election to come. I also believe that it's so important that we not be caught ever treating the presidency like the only office that matters. And this is where the work that you're doing is so important. I'm doing my part through an initiative we launched called Win the Era. If you want to learn more, wintheera.com is our website. We've got a political action committee and a 501c4, and we're supporting, as of now, 22 candidates running for everything from U.S. Senate to county supervisor, who we think represent that future of where our politics ought to be going. But I think it's especially important right now, and I want to encourage you in your work because of the dynamics going on around us. Think about it. On one hand, we're getting all of these reminders of why offices besides the presidency matter. We're seeing mayors and governors and county officials making crucial life or death decisions, and often filling in the gap where the failure of presidential leadership has left us by making sure that those decisions and those protections are arranged locally and at the state level instead. So we're seeing right in front of us what's at stake. Plus, with all of the talk about how to make sure we have safe and free and fair elections, we're being served up a reminder that for better or worse in our country, elections are handled by county and state officials for the most part. Never have we seen more reminders of the importance of the unglamorous offices that aren't getting the attention of the presidential election. And at the same time, never has there been less room, less attention, less oxygen, and I sometimes fear less money available to making sure that we do well in those critical offices up and down the ballot. And that's where the party building work that you're doing comes in so crucially, to make sure that we do come together and support one another up and down the ticket in ways that are as critical, as important as that vital goal of making sure we take back the White House into the right hands. I have to say, I think conservatives probably paid more attention to this over the last few decades, but I think now we know just how important it is to do that. Again, I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but I want to encourage you in that work and give you a little bit of ammunition to remind others about how important that work is. I also want to speak a little bit to some hand-wringing that I think is going on among Democrats who are worried, whether looking at the presidential or the other races, about how we can possibly conduct campaigning and do it successfully at a moment when we're having to move it into the virtual space. Again, we're people involved in politics. Our bread and butter is to physically gather people together, to look one another in the eye, and to shake hands, and we're excluded from doing that. But it's also the case that we have opportunities like what we're doing right now, which probably doesn't sit naturally for any of us, and yet has given us a chance to look one another in the eye and to offer one another that support and to raise resources, crucially, for the party organization. I want to make sure that we don't expect the candidates or the campaigns alone to do this. You know, I'm on an event, for example, with Vice President Biden every other day, probably something, whether it's a fundraiser or an event to drum up support. I can tell you that he's doing everything that he can do, and our candidates are, even if they're confined to their homes, they're doing everything that they can do. But are we doing everything we can do to make sure that the virtual phone banks are populated, that the virtual field offices, the process of reaching out to one another, even if it's got to be over the phone, is getting all the attention and resources that it deserves? I guess what I'm saying is the next time you hear somebody engaging in this hand-wringing, saying, are the campaigns going to figure out how to campaign and be effective in this virtual space? Remind them that the answer to that question is you. The answer to that question is not just whether some clever campaign staff member figures out a new approach, or whether a candidate is doing everything they can do, even if confined to their home. but it's whether each of those of us who would be motivated to knock on a door or swing open the doors of a brick and mortar field office somewhere feel equipped and motivated to do the exact same with the tools that are available to us right here at home. If we can turn that corner, if we can change that mentality among all of our supporters, then we're going to be unstoppable this fall. The last thing I want to reflect on is the two sides of the coin of living in this painful and difficult moment that we're in. That on the one hand, it means that we're not able to do things in the way that we're used to. But worse than that, that we're looking around at what's happening to our economy and to our country and to our society. And I think all of us feel our stomach turning as we watch the destruction and the pain and the harm and realize this may just be the beginning. But also in American history, moments like that, seasons like that, are the moments that are decisive for what happens next. In other words, alongside the pain and the frustration and the pressure on our optimism that comes with a moment like this, there is also an outsized opportunity to make a difference. The generations that are confronted with this issue, and when I say generation, I mean anybody who is alive and eligible to vote or even just old enough to volunteer at a moment like this, have the good and bad luck of being around at a moment when it's going to matter for how the 2020s unfold, and therefore how the 2030s, 40s, and 50s look. What we were doing right now in these critical few months leading to November and beyond. The cost of having a chance to make a great impact is being around in a moment of great uncertainty and fear. But that also means we've got a shot, a once in a lifetime shot, of building a better and stronger and kinder country than the one that we're in today. And that's why I believe in this work more than ever. That's why I think this challenge should energize us, even if it beats us down from time to time. And that's why I'm proud to support you. I'm proud to be associated with you. And I am very much looking forward one day to being able to visit with you in person. Thanks again so much for the chance to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Pete. We are very honored that you took time out of your night to join us. I know that you've got a jet in a few minutes for another event, but we're very grateful that you would be with us. And I especially appreciate that note of encouragement that we are in a moment right now where the winds and the world can change if we only take advantage of that and start shifting things in the direction that we want them to go. And like you said, that candidates can't do it alone. It's, that's the, and how you've jumped back on the trail to support Vice President Biden, and so many others have done that. And our next speaker, of course, Senator Heitkamp, even after losing a really tough race, barely took a break before jumping back in the ring. And so we're really grateful for your leadership. We're very grateful that you would be with us. And we do look forward to seeing you sometime down the road. Hopefully you can come back and join us here in person in North Dakota. So
I look forward to it. Thanks so much again for having us.
thanks, Pete.